Hey, good Wednesday afternoon. Thanks for joining me on this Wednesday for your lunchtime forecast. I'm meteorologist Taylor Cox, and we sure have a big forecast today, especially for October. Now let's kick it off with those storms firing right now near Omaha. We just got reports of quarter-sized hail, but we're at the very beginning of what will be a long storm day. So we have that level 3 risk. We could see large hail anywhere from Kansas to Texas. We also have a tornado risk today, a level 4 tornado risk. The best time for the stronger tornadoes will be right around sunset, but I think that we could see that tornado risk through most of the day today and even through the overnight hours. So let's get into it, but first let's see what we saw yesterday. A few wind reports farther out in Utah, but for the most part we were really quiet yesterday. Very typical October day except for the warmth. We saw some fire evacuations down in Oklahoma yesterday, and then of course overnight tonight and into early this morning we saw those showers and storms start to fire up in the plains right in Kansas and in the southern portion of Nebraska. Now, Omaha was the first area that I saw today to get that hail report. You can see that just to the south of Omaha there, quarter-sized hail. We also had a hail report a little bit farther into the eastern side of Iowa. All right, temperatures as you head out the door, still feeling the warmth through a good portion of the southern plains. But look back to the west, much cooler back there in places like Denver, Billings, where it really feels like fall. It's almost like the U.S. is divided between seasons. We've got what I've been calling Ogtober, August in October, you get it, Ogtober, and then we've got the cooler air, the actual October, the actual fall-like air out to the west. Alrighty, let's take a look at your current conditions. You can see that front that is splitting the U.S. in half, where we're splitting the warm air and the cooler, dry air on the backside of this front. This is what will be helping our storms to fire off later on this afternoon and this evening. We've got showers and storms through the plains right now. A little bit quieter, drier off to the north and east, mostly dry down to the southeast. We've got a few showers down there in Florida. That's how it seems to always be, right? Mostly dry off to the northwest, but then we've got another area of moisture coming in off the west coast, soaking Seattle and Portland on this afternoon. Alrighty, mostly quiet out to our four corners, but we've got some showers firing up just to the south of Denver. Not severe there, not severe, just some light rains, probably some cold rain out there as well. 70 here in Oklahoma City, 81, holy moly, we jumped 10 degrees down in Dallas. And it does look like we have a few showers coming into Oklahoma City as we speak. A few showers, a few clouds out near Dallas as well. Hey, speaking of these cities, if you're watching from anywhere across the U.S., yesterday we had Austin, we had Oklahoma City on here, we even had Iowa. Let me know where you're watching from so we can kind of tailor this forecast to where you are watching from across the U.S. because we're covering a lot of states today. We're covering a big area for that storm risk. And let's get into it. Let's get into that storm risk here. Okay. Forecasted instability. Where is that unstable air? That unstable air is what really helps those storms to fire. It's what helps to fuel the storms. That really looks impressive from Dallas to Oklahoma City up to Wichita, a much thinner line as we head farther up to the north and west. And that's pretty consistent as we head into the late night hours tonight, continuing to track to the east as those storms use up that unstable air and drier air starts to move in. What about that hail forecast today? Well, you know, the last few weeks we were getting these white kind of cloudy colors in the forecast. We finally have gotten some of these yellow colors coming into these models here, and that signifies to us that we could get some larger hail. So what we're watching for, where are the areas for largest hail sizes? Anywhere from Wichita to Oklahoma City, including Dallas here, and even including as far north as Kansas City and southern Iowa. So we've got a very large area from Dallas to southern Iowa that could get that large hail today. And we were actually talking just before the forecast here. It's why we started a little bit later, because the SPC is updating their risks and making the chances for large hail higher right through the central portion of Oklahoma. So we were updating our maps to reflect their thoughts on these storms as well. And we'll get into that here in just a few minutes. But here's your showers and storms right now. Omaha is what we're watching for. Some of the strongest storms, anywhere from Omaha all the way down to central Kansas. Wichita right now getting rain, but nothing is severe. These are slowly trying to work their way into Oklahoma, but what we're really watching for are those storms later on this afternoon. I would say after 2 o'clock for central Kansas. After 2 o'clock, that's whenever you're really going to start to see storms fire up. All right, here's your risk for today. Central Kansas to the eastern side of the state, western side of Missouri, and northern side of Oklahoma. The biggest risk in this area will be that tornado risk. The hail risk in this area as well, but extending a little bit farther to the south and a little bit farther to the west. As we head into the evening hours, so closer to your evening commute, maybe even dinner time at this point, those storms will start to stretch down to the south into southern Oklahoma. This will be your risk for Oklahoma City. A few hours before that in Wichita, and then a few hours after that down into Dallas. All right, storms, Kansas City, I would say anytime after 4 o'clock, but I think the sweet spot for those storms to track through will be between 6 and 10 o'clock tonight. All righty, let's not look at this wide view. Let's zoom down into it. All right, we're zooming down in now. Central Kansas, all the way up to Omaha, that's what we're seeing right now, right? This will continue to slowly track to the east as we head into the evening hours. Here's your 5 o'clock. Here's your drive back home. Wichita, you've got storms incoming. I want you to watch the weather before you leave work today. Very similar to those to the north of Kansas City, but Kansas City, I think that you have a little bit more time. Again, 6 to 10 o'clock in Kansas City, I think, is the sweet spot for those storms to come through. This will continue to track to the east through the overnight hours into the rest of Missouri, into places like Springfield, Lake of the Ozarks, and then even off to the far eastern side of the state as we head into the early morning hours tomorrow. Let's rewind our clock. Let's look at this again, but let's look at it for Oklahoma and Texas. All right, here we are, right about 2 o'clock. Whenever those storms start to fire, they'll start to stretch down into Oklahoma. This means places like Woodward, Elk City. That's whenever you'll start to see those storms in the afternoon. Now, what about Oklahoma City, Ponca City? That'll be closer to your evening commute, closer to dinner time. I'd say 6 o'clock at least, Oklahoma City. I want you to be keeping an eye on the radar. I want you to have multiple ways to receive those weather alerts. So this will continue as the sun sets. It's dark at this point. Those storms are moving through Oklahoma City right now. The better chances for your storm risk will be between I-35 and 44 up the Turner Turnpike and into Tulsa. All right, you're getting ready for bed at this point. You're still watching those storms, especially if you're in Tulsa. As we head into the overnight hours, probably in bed at this point, that's whenever storms will stretch down into Dallas, all right? They're going to be a little bit more isolated the farther down that they stretch. I'm not as worried about the severe risk the farther south that we go, but still we have a tornado risk, we have a hail risk, and we have a wind risk in Dallas as well. Places like Austin, those risks are much lower. No tornado risk down in Austin. However, hail and wind will still be possible. Now we're getting into early Thursday morning. You're headed off for your Thursday morning commute. It's cooler through the plains. You've got to grab your jacket for tomorrow morning, but we also have storms a little bit farther to the east here, anywhere from Chicago, St. Louis, Memphis. It's a level 1 storm risk, okay? So not terribly impressed by this storm risk, but we could still see some strong wind and some moderate-sized hail. I'm not going to call it large, but quarter size and up. Speaking of, let's get to that hail risk today. I talked about it earlier. Let's get right into it. We've stretched out our areas for close to baseball-sized hail a little bit farther to the west here. Now, your likelihood, the farther west that you go, is going to be a little bit lower. These are going to be isolated storms. As they track a little bit farther to the east, they're going to congeal into that nice cold front line, and that's whenever you're going to get a more widespread large hail potential. But that large hail, look at that, stretches anywhere from Oklahoma City through Wichita and up to Kansas City. Where is the best chances to see large hail today? Oklahoma City to Kansas City. The farther north that you go, I think that we could see some smaller hail up to the size of a quarter, 1 inch in size. Springfield through the overnight hours, also a little bit smaller here, right around that 1 inch size as well. Dallas, I think that 1.5 inches and 1 3/4 inches is definitely possible. You're talking about ping pong golf ball sized hail in the Dallas area, and then even smaller as you head into Austin. We can kind of go through here. You can see exactly where those cutoffs are. But I do think that western Oklahoma, this is something that we were just looking at the SBC maps here. They pushed their risk a little bit farther back to the west to include some of those places like El Reno and Mustang. I do think that these storms are going to be isolated out here, but it's still possible to get some of those larger hailstones. So even if I were to put like these little risk level chips a little bit farther to the west, I would put them in the green just to the west of Oklahoma City. So low chance to get larger hail, but it's still possible. Better chances as we get into places like Oklahoma City and Tulsa, much better chances to get large hail in this area. Alrighty, let's move on here. Let's move on. Isolated large hail up to the size of a baseball, I think is definitely possible today. Again, right in that area that I mentioned, Oklahoma City, Kansas City, Wichita. If we broke down all of our risks here, we've talked about the hail risk, talked a little bit about the wind risk. I think that the hail and the wind risk are going to be the biggest risks to watch out for today. That tornado risk, it's still on the board though. It's still on the board, so I want you to be aware of that. And it's still on the board mainly for Kansas and northern Oklahoma. All right, what about the wind risk here? I actually saw a comment in the bottom of the screen. I think it came from Facebook. What about wind-driven hail? Because that's a whole different story, right? It's been really windy across Oklahoma, and now we're getting these storms. We're getting some strong wind from these storms. Can we get some wind-driven hail from these storms today? I don't think that's out of the question. I think that's possible. So where are we going to get the strongest winds? Anywhere from Des Moines all the way down to Dallas for strong winds. Who has the best chance for high wind speeds today? Oklahoma City to Kansas City. One thing to note here, that hail risk, I have it cutting off a little bit farther to the west. That wind risk from some of these storms that go into the early morning hours stretches a little bit farther to the east. Okay, so I think that the hail risk will drop off first, wind risk after that. The wind risk will stretch farther into the early morning hours. And we can kind of go down here. You can see where some of these lines cut off here as well. The wind risk goes all the way down into Austin as well. Alrighty, moving on here. There's your tornado risk. We talked about this a little bit, but it stretches anywhere from central Kansas, a little bit to the east, and then down into the northern portion, even portions of the central portion of Oklahoma, into like places like Guthrie. That level 1 risk stretches down into Dallas and then up to Des Moines, but again, that area that we're really watching for is right in the center of Kansas to northern Oklahoma. Alrighty, that was your storm risk. If you guys have any questions about that, feel free to put them in the comments. I'm usually pretty good about going back after the forecast and typing in our answers afterwards. So put those in the comments and we can get to those after the forecast. You can always go back and watch this forecast as well. If you want to see those graphics again, you can pause it, zoom in, and take your time breaking down that graphic for where you live. But I do want to move on. I want to talk about Halloween, or as we like to call it at Hail Trace, Halloween. Happy Halloween. We are 1 day away. I hope you have your costume picked out. I have mine picked out. I'll be wearing it on the forecast tomorrow. I hope it fits. I haven't tried it on yet, but we'll see. I guess we'll see tomorrow. Okay, the severe risk for tomorrow goes from Louisiana to Mississippi. The rest of the U.S., especially through the plains and farther back to the west, has a cool down. So will you have to wear your jacket for Halloween? I think it's definitely possible. Looking ahead to Friday, the first day of November now, we have an active weather pattern set up. We are starting to get into that second severe weather season. So as we get into the 1st of November, we have a risk for storms out to the west for New Mexico and portions of western Texas. For Saturday, Oklahoma Panhandle, Texas Panhandle, and portions of eastern New Mexico. I didn't get all the way into Sunday. For Sunday, we have a risk out to Oklahoma as well. And for Monday, we also have a risk. Okay, so that risk goes not only today and tomorrow out to the east, but we also go back to the west for Saturday and Sunday. We'll have that on our Facebook page. I know I didn't show it on here, but we'll have it on our Facebook page. Alrighty, let's take a look at your temperatures. I mentioned a cool down. Look at all that cooler air moving through. It finally feels like fall. Temperatures cooling down to the upper 40s on Friday morning and Friday afternoon into the 60s and 70s. Saturday is game day. It's going to be a little bit cooler on Saturday with temperatures in the 60s, and it looks like we should see some rain on Saturday as well. Speaking of the rain, we're going to be above average for your rainfall totals as we get into the first week of November. November 4th through the 8th, it looks like rainfall totals are going to be a lot more impressive here across the central portion of the U.S. Still staying on the warmer side for the first week of November out to the east, but that cooler air is really trying to make its way in here. Alrighty, I mentioned the OU game. Let's go OU, Boomer Sooner. Come to our tailgate. We would love to see you there. Come say hello. It's on Saturday, November 2nd, just before the game. The game starts at 1:30, the tailgate at 11:30. Really easy to remember where we are for that tailgate. It's tent 112 across from gate 12. Temperatures are going to be in the 60s, and we have a 60% chance for rain. So bring your rain jacket. It's going to be on the cooler side, really feeling like fall here. I feel like we always get at least one rainy game a season. This is our game. Either way, we finally get those cooler temperatures and we have that wet weather in the forecast. Personal foul for the weather here. Bring your rain jacket. I don't think we're going to see severe weather here, but some minor flash flooding is possible. What about the tropics? All right, we had a very, very active tropical trend for a while. It's been pretty quiet here lately. But it does look like over the next 7 days, we're watching one area for low pressure system, potential tropical cyclone development in this area. So I have this from November 1st through the 4th to see a little bit more activity in this area. The National Hurricane Center says 40% chance for tropical cyclone development. And that's it. Holy moly, we had a big forecast today. Okay, we of course have that chance for storms this evening. If you want to see this forecast again, you can rewatch it here in about 30 seconds whenever we hop off. Make sure that you're weather aware, but of course we'll be tracking those storms. We have a meteorologist staffed 24/7 here at Hail Trace, so we'll make sure that you are up to date on any of those storm impacts as we head into the afternoon and overnight hours. In the meantime, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and Threads. And if you have a question about a wind, hail, or tornado map, head over to hailtrace.com or email us at info@hailtrace.com. If you want to talk to a person, we have them staffed as well through the business hours, 855-334-4245. Give us a call. All right, thanks for hanging out with us for your forecast here on this Wednesday afternoon. We'll be back here, same time, same place, tomorrow.